Summer in California is synonymous with fire season, but this is slowly becoming more of a year-round problem. Many would say this is due to climate change, and they would be right. But what if I told you that corruption and greed were actually behind some of the deadliest and most destructive wildfires California has ever seen? This is the story of a company whose greed and mismanagement has caused numerous lives and homes to be lost, and it is the only corporation in the US that has been charged with not one, but 84 counts of homicide, yet nothing has really been done to answer for their crimes.
Do you die if only one leech gets on you?
No.
But what if it gets on you and you never notice? On another note, what do you call a useless elephant?
What?
Irrelevant.
Oh my god.
PG&E has had an ongoing role in causing some of the deadliest wildfires in California history, and today we are going to be talking about fire season, steps that need to be taken in order to diminish the impact of fires, and a company that has a clear paper trail and government acknowledgement of its mismanagement and fault. Recently, I visited an area that I've been going to since I was a child with my family, but this time was special because I was able to take my husband with me for the first time. This area inspired this video because it too has had a brush with fire recently. And it made me think of all the people who lost much more than their favorite recreational areas. So besides fires, PG&E has some other well-known disasters that have caused irrevocable damage. Anyone seen Aaron Brockovich? Yeah, that disaster and the following highest grossing direct action lawsuit at the time was because of them. In 2010, a federal investigation found PG&E to be at fault for an explosion caused by a gas pipe leak that occurred in a neighborhood in San Bruno, causing the deaths of 8 people, injuring 38 more, and destroying many homes. The gas pipeline was installed in 1956. It didn't meet the safety standards then, and in 2010, it certainly didn't. A federal court convicted PG&E on 6 felony counts and put the company into a 5-year probationary period. While it seems like PG&E would be rightfully worried about its actions while on probation, the company had a massive problem. Records of its power lines hadn't been updated in 40 years. Furthermore, information like the make and age of switches, circuit breakers, and voltage regulators of their equipment was missing from their system. This begs the question how safety can be regulated if the information about the equipment is unknown. To resolve the issue, PG&E hired Quanta Technology, but even they couldn't identify the age of more than 7,000 towers in the system, and they found that 3,000 transmission lines were over 100 years old. To put this into perspective, the American Society of Civil Engineers states that 50 years is the average life expectancy of power lines. Quanta Technology recommended to PG&E that they send out personnel every 3 years to inspect the power lines, but PG&E dismissed the idea. Something had to be done about the aging infrastructure, but instead, executive bonuses and compensation were given to PG&E employees. It was even discovered that PG&E lied about inspecting sites around electrical cables and pipelines. These problems were all compounded by the fact that after 2010, California went into a historic drought due to climate change. The forest vegetation and fuel surrounding the lines was dry and waiting to be lit. One specific area, the Caribou-Palermo transmission route located in Northern California near Butte County, had lines that were known to be old as well as too close to the ground and surrounding brush. In 2014, PG&E promised to do maintenance on this route, but the company pushed the project out. Around the same time, some mid-level employees complained about an overzealous program director who was rewarding employees who submitted their inspection reports on time, even though no inspection had taken place yet. Instead of responding to these complaints and being concerned for its lack of authenticity, PG&E promoted the program director and let those who brought the problem to its attention go. PG&E not only knew its data was falsified, it promoted those responsible for lying and submitted this data to company regulators. Now, PG&E had yet to receive its punishment for the San Bruno incident, but in 2015, the verdict was decreed and a $1.6 billion fine was given to the company for the violation of safety laws. This outstanding number should have been a wake-up call, but it sadly wasn't. Even if PG&E had wanted to upgrade its systems and equipment, it was literally years behind. In a 3-year period from 2015 to 2017, PG&E was reported to having caused 1,550 more fires due to its faulty equipment. A $33.3 million upgrade was proposed for the Caribou-Palermo transmission route, but it was delayed. On the morning of November 8, 2018, there were high winds in Butte County, and the region was in a red flag fire weather watch. At 6:15 a.m., wind speeds were at 52 miles per hour, and a gust of wind caused one of the PG&E power lines to fall off its tower. A fire in the dry grass was sparked, and a PG&E crew member saw the blaze and was the first to report it to officials. The fire was dubbed the Camp Fire due to it being started near Camp Creek Road. The location of the fire was a huge problem for first responders, as it was an unpaved, windy road that fire trucks could not drive fast on, and due to the high winds, helicopters were grounded. At 7:23, evacuation orders were sent out to locals, and 5,200 residents were told they needed to evacuate. Most of the residents of Paradise, however, were elderly, and many would need assistance to be able to escape. Due to the enormous amount of people evacuating, the road soon became heavy with traffic. The road out of a nearby town of Concow became blocked by a fallen tree at 8:07 a.m., which was one of the only getaway routes for evacuees. The blaze began traveling at speeds of 80 miles per hour, so fast that some of the people were forced to get out of their cars and literally make a run for it, and some did not make it. This was the deadliest and most destructive fire in California history at this point. Records were broken for the number of lives it took. It took first responders 2 weeks and help from heavy rainfall to put the fire out. At the end, the town of Paradise was burned to the ground with $16 billion of damage, 86 lives were lost, 50 more people with secondary health issues died as a result of the smoke in the air, and dozens of civilians were injured, including 5 first responders. With 83,000 victims coming forward to make liability claims of $30 million, one would think a multi-billion-dollar company would want in some way to bring closure for victims, even though money could never begin to compensate families for the loss of their loved ones and their homes. In spite of this, PG&E claimed it didn't have the cash to pay survivors, and in the wake of this disaster, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. While it couldn't seem to find the money to pay survivors, they were still able to find cash to pay $25 billion to insurance companies and the U.S. government for its fault and negligence. In a federal court case that took over 28 minutes to list the charges against the company, PG&E pled guilty to 84 counts of homicide. PG&E is one of the only companies in the United States that's been charged with homicide, the amount to which would equate to a 90-year prison sentence if charged to an individual, yet no one has stepped up to answer for their crimes. And another thing, besides there being only a few ways to punish monopolies, including fines, probation, and dissolution, PG&E has spent over $10 million in political donations to both Democrats and Republicans, which is 2 times more than its competitor, Southern California Edison. A law was even passed called AB 1054 that allowed PG&E to dip into the state's $21 billion taxpayer-funded insurance account after the Camp Fire. The money spent on public officials could have been used to fix power lines and equipment to stop the fires from even happening. Instead of spending money on safety measures, the company effectively spent money protecting their interests in the event of a disaster. And boy, did it pay off. Alright, that was a lot. I'm sorry for just blowing up your minds and depressing you. But on the slightly brighter side, today PG&E is in the process of a $30 billion project that intends to bury power lines in the Northern California underground to prevent any more fires from happening. According to Bill Stewart, a forestry specialist from UC Berkeley, climate change is extending the fire season so that it's almost a year-round problem. The Camp Fire, which we've been talking about, happened almost in December when the forest should have been wet from rainfall. California's wildfire preventative measures may contribute to the nature of such destructive fires. Smokey Bear tactics of not letting any fire burn has made us afraid of fire. Burning huge swaths of fuel or forest and grassland allows for there to be different levels of fuel so that the fire doesn't spread so quickly and continuously. As the saying goes, you quite literally have to fight fire with fire. California has pledged to burning 1 million acres of fuel per year for the next 5 years, which is an ambitious goal, but one they hope will cut down on wildfire season. So overall, we learned about a company whose negligence led to the deaths of hundreds of people. Fire season in California is one of our biggest concerns and one of the scariest ones as well. But hopefully with the implementation of some new methods, we can stop the spread of wildfires and see less destructive and more manageable fires. So a little bit about the painting, which is why you may have come here in the first place. But this painting, I just wanted to talk about PG&E with the power line in the foreground and its effect on the forest, and I put the deer, and I kind of wanted to include some abstracted elements to talk about our impact and the fear within wildlife that you can see at the end.
That's a thick ass boy.
We have friends.
This beautiful sunset also inspired much of the color palette of this painting. So pretty. And here you can see the bits of fire that I put it in the painting to talk about wildfires more. And here's the finished piece. It's made out of oil paint and acrylic and pastel to include those forest textures. Thanks for listening to my story, and I hope you come back next time.